Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.
Hey, good afternoon. It is the 29th of May, and we've been getting April showers this entire month, it seems. But it's beautiful out, and it's crisp, and I hope it stays that way. We've had a few super humid, like sauna humid days in the past week, and that stuff's only fun when I'm at the lake or something, or at a pool. I'm definitely not going to any pools anytime soon. So today, I've been reading about like hepatitis outbreak in kids and viruses that have been on the decline, or at least haven't been high in reporting because of pandemic measures. And I thought this was really interesting because, you know, flu was kind of relaxed. I don't know anybody who got sick this last year or this last flu season, but apparently there have been rising cases of flu like right now. And this is traditionally not flu season. And there are other viruses that have been popping up, and it's also not common for these to pop up. And so what the article kind of summarize, they were talking about how people in isolation who essentially now are rearing to get out, who haven't been socializing properly, have not been producing the proper level of other antibodies that we would normally produce through exposure. And so this group of people who just can't wait because it's so nice out, and it's also, you know, Memorial Day weekend, and, you know, barbecue and wings, and everyone's kind of excited about this weekend because, you know, it's the first big barbecue weekend, I think. And, you know, I think here in a couple of weeks we're going to see another Omicron surge instead of B21A 1212 Megatron. I mean, when I look at all of these numbers, and it still looks like, hey, this shit's still happening. It just kind of makes me wonder. But then, of course, I see the way people drive on the roads, like everyone's in rush hour hurry, and it's not rush hour, and I just don't get it.
It's a lot of people are acting as if COVID is over and we're post-COVID. So it's like, the way that people aren't taking tests and the way that it's not being reported, I don't think the mainstream media has the capacity to take it seriously anymore because Americans have stopped.
Yeah.
So it is going to just resurge, but the media is still not going to report it because Americans are tired of it, so they're not going to listen to it.
I mean, I've received a grand total of 16 COVID at-home tests from the government for free. For going to the website, the Postal Service website, and saying, "Hey, send me this stuff." And
I think we only received I think it's 4 or 8 total. And it's like we were waiting for so long. We put in our requests, and it was like, well, no, I think it was 4. Because once I put mine in, Yasi wasn't able to order. Like, it was like because
that's by address.
Yeah, exactly. So that one time, I think it took 3 months. I don't even remember. It took so long that by the time I was exposed at some point, and I never actually ended up getting sick, but we ordered the test where it was like you couldn't find the test on the shelves, so ordering the test was really the only chance we had at that point, or the only option. And that's where I'm like, I didn't. It took so long for them to get there. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna use these when I actually need them. So we haven't used them, but
Yeah, I
I
haven't
don't
used any
really.
of them.
Yeah, I have no inclination on trying to order any more because I'm like, I don't trust that they'll get here in any useful time, so I might as well not do it. Like, they're just too unreliable. The idea that I got money to Ukraine before I can get a fucking second set of COVID tests is absurd. This government is a joke. It's an absolute joke. And my thing is real quick, there's over 400 million guns and there's not 400 million Americans. We don't need any more new guns. Like,
no, you're right. These things are made of like heavy duty steel. They last 100 plus years if they're cared for.
And it'll make them more valuable. But at that, we don't need any more new guns. We don't have to even, like, we can ban assault weapons. Yeah, let's do that. Ban handguns. I don't give a fuck. I don't even own a gun. But we don't need any new guns. Shut down the gun makers. Because my thing is, like, if you look at the laws in many of the states in this country, if you are a bartender and you serve someone alcohol and they go drunk drive, you might catch a case too.
Yeah.
Not just because that person crashed their car, but because you served an intoxicated person and let them go get behind the car. So you telling me all these gun makers who are fucking enabling this shit and taking up all of the country's money, like, there's so much money being wasted on guns where I'm like, let's just stop making guns and stop letting our governments, our global governments should be banned from buying guns or buying any new guns. We don't need any new fucking guns. No new weapons. No new weapons, period. We should have a new weapons ban globally. And it's absurd that some rando on the fucking internet has to be the crazy person to suggest something as remotely.
Oh man. So there's a doctor, I think it's in Wisconsin or maybe it's in Minnesota. I can't, that detail slips my mind. Anyways, they went into a gun shop and they purchased an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle, and they timed it and they said it took them, just under 15 minutes. And then they called a person on the phone who met them in the parking lot, and they proceeded to they went through the standard background check, the NICS background check for those who don't know, and they filled out all sorts of paperwork and yada yada. It took him less than 15 minutes to go in, buy a rifle and a bunch of ammunition, like boxes of ammunition. And then he waited for some period of time before this dude shows up in the parking lot and then purchased it. And because of the laws in the state they live in, they didn't have to perform a background check because it was a private party transaction. It's the same deal in Indiana. There might be some, pressure to background check, but I'm pretty sure that private party transactions don't require that kind of stuff. I could be wrong though. Well, anyways, that transaction was not monitored by the government after it left the gun shop. And at the end of the story, they revealed that the person who purchased it was a local law enforcement member and one of his buddies. And so they were just doing it to demonstrate the flaws in the laws and regulatory process of firearms. And then more something that I found more odd than just like, oh man, you can just buy this thing in less than half an hour. You can buy a crowd killer in less than half an hour. Is that in some states you have to be 21 to purchase a handgun, but you can purchase a semi-automatic rifle and a bunch of bullets when you're 18. When one of these crowd killers can obviously take out, a room full of people way faster than a handgun.
It's absolutely ridiculous that I can go buy a death weapon, a death tool, but I can't go buy some fucking weed legally. That's stupid.
Yeah, that's really
fucking stupid.
It's
That's
not even a hunting
really
rifle.
dumb.
This isn't even the kind of. I guess people use them to kill. Like people do use
I mean,
them to
hunting
kill.
rifle's a death weapon, a death tool too. It's
Sure.
a literal death tool, but it's actually, at least that person is meant to be using it for an actual tool.
Yeah.
But that's the closest thing to civilized, and we can debate whether killing animals for meat is civilized or not, but definitely killing people is not civilized. So the idea of anything beyond that, whether it's for military or any other or law enforcement purposes, is inhumane, and we need to acknowledge, like, we need to let our governments know that those tools should not be used by law enforcement or military either. They're fucking inhumane. And then, well, what about the other people? Well, fuck them for now, because we're not worried about goddamn Red Dawn, because Russia can't Red Dawn fucking their goddamn Ukraine neighbors. So we're not worried about that shit for now. Let's not worry about that hypothetical goddamn stupid movie scenario that's not gonna fucking happen. So let's leave that as things that are definitely not gonna happen, as to explanations as to why we need more new guns or more new weapons.
I think people are really, their Red Dawn resonates with the fear center, like the reptile brain in some people, because in the end, basically the Wolverines are dead. They're all done. The Russians win. And then in the second version, what is it, like North Koreans or the Chinese or whatever? Like, seriously, the Chinese aren't going to invade us. They're not going to invade Taiwan. They're just going to do their economic thing and show their boats. They invented fireworks, for crying out loud. Let them launch.
Own too much property here. Why would they invade a place where they own too much property?
Yeah, they make more money off of America doing America than they could ever possibly make by spending the incredible vast fortunes necessary to cross the fucking ocean and attack America. That's like the most absurd. That's an irrational fear, but
very irrational.
But I want to get back to your point about firearms. Like at one point during the pandemic, when it was just older people getting sick, the very strong argument for being careful, which seemed to work on a lot of people, was, hey man, if this thing was killing kids, would you act differently? And of course everyone's like, oh yeah, if it's kids, we'll rally behind it and do whatever's necessary. But I graduated high school in 1999. And we had a bomb threat that year. And before that, there weren't really school shootings. Columbine happened, like, later, I think, right? When did Columbine happen? Fuck that. Still.
We had multiple bomb threats a year. Bomb threats used to be something you sat in the fucking auditorium and watched a movie for a while, swept through the goddamn lockers, because it happened so frequently, because students were trying to use it as a way to get out of school. So, like, I know there were multiple people who would coordinate with other schools and have them call in bomb threats to other people's schools, and there was too much shit for them to go on.
Well, the kid who called it in my school, he got caught by the FBI. Like, he was not part of some operation. He was stupid. He was trying to get out of a math final.
I don't know if I've told this story on the show before, but this girl wrote a death threat to Hillary Clinton, and the Secret Service showed up the next day, and it was from a different person's account. But it's like, if there's like a even remotely credible threat, they'll fucking show up.
Oh yeah, they're they're in a flash.
But there was a while where bomb threats were just being treated like, oh, students are trying to get out, so we'll take them and sweep the lockers, but we know there's not a real threat.
Yeah, like in Bloomington, until that year, there weren't bomb threats. There weren't like guns in schools. Like, there were people who had like their compound bow in the back of their truck, but they weren't carrying it into school. They were taking it into the archery range for archery class. There were, but it was like, I remember distinctly, it was like after I'd graduated high school, that's when I started paying attention to national news. But, Columbine happens, a whole bunch of other crazy shit starts happening, but it's sparse, and then it all really starts ramping up in the last, decade, and now it's just kind of, what did the Onion say recently? It's like 21, was it that this year or something like that? 21 school shootings.
Happening too fast.
Yeah, it's happening so fast. We can't even. We're back at this place where it's like there's no time to grieve. There's no time to understand what's going on. It's all just one after another, and so even the strong, compelling argument, save the children, is failing because some idiots want to hold on to their military style weapons. It's like, I mean, at what point is it unnecessary? Like, do people actually need a minigun? How about an RPG? Do I need a fucking Stinger? Sure, why not? Because they make them. I mean, why can't I have a fucking Sidewinder or a Phoenix missile? Ooh, I know. Give me one of those like retro ICBMs from Russia from like the 60s. Just find one, like I need one of those, because why not? I can learn how to manage a fucking missile silo, right? It's like the absurdity that even people with training at some point in their life think that they can still manage some tool that they should really be training with in perpetuity from the moment they start using it until the day they stop using it. But like that it's okay to just, oh yeah, we're going to keep this thing around. We're going to keep it around kids. And I know that there are responsible firearms owners who have safes and they don't let anyone know how to get into the safe. And, bravo. And I hope that they never have that situation where some kid finds something they shouldn't and, takes that thing to school. But there has to be a reasonable solution, right? Unless it's just an additional mask for like racism or some kind of weird hate that's inward, like replacement theory based hate or something. They're just willing to let other people's kids die so they can clutch their.
Yeah, they don't actually care about kids, bro.
Yeah,
they never did. And that's where the idea that argument would be compelling. It's like, well, if they actually cared about kids, there wouldn't be poor children in America in the first place.
Yeah.
Or like no kid would be without medical care and things like that. So there's like all these things about the current existence of children in America in general. 97% of all gun violence against 4-year-olds happens in America on the entire fucking planet. 97% of all gun violence against 4-year-olds and under happens in America. We have a fucking problem that like people don't want to admit is a problem because they've never been anywhere else to know that this shit doesn't exist elsewhere. I had a cousin that went to Europe.
I'm still kind of processing gun violence against 4-year-olds.
I mean, it's not something you can process. It's not something we should be processing. It's like impossible. If you process it, you should break down and cry if you actually think about what that means. So it's like impossible for Americans to actually deal with the trauma of our situation. So we just use escapism to constantly keep from breaking down, and that keeps us from addressing the problems. So that's where I'm like, to see the sports teams being like, yeah, we're not going to run our games and we're going to run shit about gun violence. There's something different about this, mainly being that the normal escapism that people use to get away from these things are not being compliant in the manufactured consent this time, because by having a football game, by having a baseball game, by having a boxing match, we're just going to act like nothing's wrong.
Hey,
it's
we're
okay.
really sorry this terrible tragedy happened, but watch this sports ball event.
Moment of silence. Okay, now we'll move on back to regular program.
And now so and so's going to sing the national anthem very badly.
That idea that people can just be forced to keep moving on because society does not permit us time to act. Like, I don't know if you can ever deal with that trauma, but society doesn't even give you a chance to stop and be like, okay, let me process this because I don't know what the fuck just happened. And then because of that, if you don't, as an individual, continue to keep moving, then it's the problem with you because on top of that, our society doesn't count. Like, mental health doesn't matter. So somebody's mental health being preserved is not actually important. So that's why the kids' safety, it was always a fake fucking argument. Whoever was using it, Democrats, Republicans, anybody who says, oh, it's the video games. Well, you don't care about that shit anyway. You don't actually, like the Republicans who are saying the video games as what's to blame or lack of God and the lack of church attendance. Fuck those people first off. And for them to like then pretend that they actually care about children is like, fuck you. Fuck those people. I can't stand this country and its current incarnation in that the way that the people try to pretend to care about children and then poor children exist. Fucking child murder exists because they're too afraid to stand up against the gun companies. Like, fuck all of them. Fuck all of those people in Congress. Fuck the president. Fuck, like, Supreme Court. Fuck all those people who are trying to overturn Roe versus Wade while they say they can't do shit about gun control. Fuck you. Fuck you for thinking I'm stupid. You're just complicit. You're a fucking coward. You don't want to stand up because you're afraid of the fucking gun nuts. You're afraid of the guns. Fuck all those people for being cowards and not declaring that we not just end assault rifles, fucking end guns, end fucking weapons. We don't need any new fucking weapons. We don't need any new goddamn nukes. We don't need any new fucking missiles. We don't need any new fucking guns. We don't need new fucking tasers. We don't need any new fucking swords. No new fucking weapons. Period. Guess what? We don't need any fucking new weapons as a goddamn species. So if we can't agree that as a species we don't need any new weapons, then fuck us. We don't deserve get off this fucking planet. Fuck Elon's stupid fucking Republican plan. It was always a stupid fucking Republican plan. That's why I'm like, this species does not deserve to fucking exist. If you can't protect 4-year-olds from gun companies and their incessant bloodlust, fuck this goddamn species. This species does not deserve. And that's why I'm like, yeah, guess what? I'll go down with it. But this ship does not deserve to sail. Straight up. It does not deserve to be on any fucking ocean. At this, I'm not saying I'm qualified to cast judgment on an entire species, but I'm gonna fucking do it.
No.
This species wait. Sucks.
You can.
Right now,
you absolutely can cast judgment because you're not out there
I'm gonna do it.
trying to fucking like undermine our fucking life support system.
Man, here's the thing.
No.
Here's the thing. If these people actually believed in God and they believed our species or any individual was gonna get judged, oh, you're telling me you sat by and let kids get shot from even like from afar? Oh, I'm not in the same state. I can't do anything about that. I'm just gonna go. You're not getting into fucking heaven. I don't care how many communions you take. That God is not gonna fucking let you in heaven. He set, if this or she or whoever set this thing up to test us, everybody's fucking failing every time a child dies. Every time a single child dies, we're all failing. We're all responsible for that shit. And anybody who thinks that they can just get into heaven while some other child died, I got a fucking surprise for you. That's not the way this shit works. Guess what? If you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, fuck you too for allowing that shit to happen and thinking you can just go on because your little personal morals are okay to not stand up for fucking children being slaughtered. I am so tired of kids not being able to survive childhood. I'm lucky. Guess what? I'm lucky because this system does not give a fuck about anybody. So as a person who survived childhood, that shit is just pure fucking luck. It's pure luck. It's not anything but fucking luck. And anybody who thinks otherwise is deluding themselves and thinking they're special. You think you're fucking special. Guess what? I was out at the Speedway yesterday. A fight broke out 100 feet away. Guess what? Somebody could pull a fucking gun, and instantly now I'm in the proximity to a fucking shootout. That shit happens all the time. It happens. It's probably happening right now somewhere because it's a fucking barbecue day. That's why I stay my ass the fucking inside most of the time.
Dude, it's barbecue gun season right now. Everyone with their barbecue guns out in full effect. They got to show everyone their giant chrome piece that they can't, conceal because it's ridiculous. Also, this barbecue gun does not get fired ever because it's really a piece of jewelry. You've seen them. You've seen them at Kroger before. You've seen that granny holding some giant 44 Magnum on her hip. It's clearly too big for anyone. Also, looks like it's just polished to the jewelry. That's what that shit is. It's the giant watch for homosexuals. I'm sure that we're gonna get some coverage of shootouts in. Let's see, where do they historically like to cover shootouts? Chicago, obviously.
What already happened in Tennessee at a high school fucking graduation? It already happened in Tennessee.
Today?
Last night.
Ugh.
Yes, we don't have fucking time to keep up with this shit, man.
These people just got out of high school and they're already shooting each other up.
6 teenagers got killed in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Or wait, hold on. Oh, hold on. It's the way they phrase this shit, they don't even want to say it. 6 people were shot, 2 of whom suffered life-threatening injuries. So I don't know if anybody's actually dead yet, but the way they made it seem in the other ones, I thought that 4 people are expected to survive and 2, So I think 2 people are dead or brain dead or dying. And there are 4 who are now expected to survive. But when I first read it, it read like 6 people have been killed. But again, it's this way that the news is reporting on it, it's like they're rushing to report on it to be oh, I got the next cut. They want to be the one that breaks the next fucking story instead of doing anything to actually stop this shit from happening. I don't know if they just don't they don't have the capacity or time to process the trauma either. So they just keep doing it, and because it's their job, they just keep getting swallowed down that particular hole.
They do. That's exactly what they do.
That makes it worse.
They've got a mortgage to pay. They've got a car payment to pay. They've got some bills to pay. They've got their loans to pay off from school. They've got all this shit that they have to, that if they don't stop doing whatever it is they do, all of the weight of that world comes crashing down on them, and then they're like everyone else who's, hand-to-mouth, destitute, or indigent member of society. They've lost the inertia or momentum from their catapult into success from school, and so they can't stop. If they do, they're done. I mean, I'm pretty sure being a journalist in a major city or being part of a major media group has a lot of really serious demands that I can't even imagine. But I know that that's got to be a high-stress job, especially if they're on TV or have to travel like regularly or all the time. That's got to be rough. You might.
Sure, but then does the notion of their objectivity come from a point that's meant to put them in a place to manufacture compliance, so they can't ever speak out against gun violence because they have to stay objective and they have to report both sides, which then means they have to represent the fucking gun companies. So why should the journalists have to represent the people who are getting shot and the gun companies.
Oh no, I
How
don't
the
think they
fuck does
can.
that shit
I
work?
don't think they can.
I don't think they can either.
I think that journalism now is essentially a platform for marketing on any level, because all advertising is all press is good press, good or bad or otherwise. Any press is good press now. So as long as someone's talking about something, that thing is now has a light on it, has a spotlight, and people are going to pay attention to it. It's just become a variation of marketing, and so they'll only report on things that help sustain some portion of the economy that they're involved in, or their conglomerate is involved in. Of course, they have to report, big air quotes, report on social events and things that happen to entire cities when they lose some of their kids. But the Onion is the only media group right now that's really being honest. When they say however many times this has happened this year, nobody seems to be able to do anything about it. That's honest, and that's fucked up, because the Onion's a satire. They're not supposed to report actual news, but that seems to be that's like the most honest reporting that's happening about this whole shit show. The Onion's not supposed to be like the lens of truth. Well, maybe it is.
I mean, that's where their satire was meant to be, but it was not meant to be the only. Like, it's only funny if they're not the only ones doing it.
Yeah, but they're the only ones doing it.
So it's no longer funny.
No.
It's just satire. And that's where, like, satire doesn't have to be funny. It has to mock. It has to parody, but it does not necessarily have to invoke laughter for those things to be true, which is where sometimes satire is just sad because the things that are being satirized are not funny in any manner. So then it's like, well, nobody's really laughing every time they run that nation.
Oh, I'm sure some asshole out there is laughing, and they're a piece of shit. Like,
I mean, that's not who the person. That's not what the Onion article's for.
I know.
That's not for people to actually laugh at. Which is where I'm like, no human being is actually laughing at that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, the person who is that asshole, fuck that person. That's not who the Onion is. Not actually for that person.
Yeah.
So this is where, again, when satire is meant to be like Kurt Vonnegut writing fucking science fiction because censorship is happening, that's what satire becomes when all this propaganda and fucking tabloid and nothing is actually any news of substance. So I'm like, it's not meant to be funny when they're doing that. It's definitely not. They're not trying to be like, ha ha ha.
Oh yeah,
that's not what that is at all.
No, I think what the Onion has accomplished in strangely accurately reporting on a few very sensitive topics is that they get to reveal the holes in our system in a way that we don't normally get to see. They're not afraid of, I think anyone who's buying commercial space on the Onion, they know what they're getting into. And so they're not going to be mad when they run something about, shootings. This is the 21st time, the 22nd time. Eventually it'll be,
that's,
we'll get 50
if you go to the Onion right now, that's all they have on their page.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not funny. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you go to onion.com right now, all they have on the front page, no way to prevent this, says only nation where this regularly happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's satire of the news, but they are tired of doing this, clearly.
Yeah.
They're tired of this. I mean, everybody's tired, but that's why there's like no comedy in what they're doing, so they're not trying to make it funny.
Yeah.
This is a sad state of affairs where this is like just different cities,
Different schools.
Atlanta, Boulder, Indianapolis, Uvalde, like the pros and cons of letting children die. NRA convention applauds as gunman massacres entire crowd, you know. So it's like the Onion has no capacity to actually be funny left. Like they don't have the room, they don't have the luxury to actually be funny anymore because they have to, like, America has become so reliant on escapism that escapism has finally been like, hey, guess what? We can't take it anymore. You're using us as a crutch, and guess what? That wears on us too.
Yeah.
The fucking escapism, they can't take it anymore. And it's all like, hey, yeah, guess what? We're gonna run gun statistics during this normally scheduled baseball game. During this normally scheduled satire, we're gonna make you reminded that it's constantly the same shit over and over. You don't even get satire. You don't even get funny satire anymore. It's like the escapism. And I think we talked about it kind of in the movies being devoid of anything new.
Yeah, they're all just predictable roller coasters now.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens when the creators are jaded and they have nothing to actually look forward to in real life. When the creatives, like everybody is in this situation where there's like a super prison presence of the kind of, and when you leave America and you realize the prison population isn't that huge, it's like, oh yeah, the rest of the world, it's not that the rest of the world's okay, but imperialism it can't dominate everywhere at the same time. And that's why they constantly threaten to blow everything up. They're like, oh, if you don't want to be imperialist, I'm going to fucking nuke you. How about that? You want to live your way? I'm going to drop a nuke on you. Or you need to wear this fucking stupid Western tie. You better put on those slacks and that belt.
Hell no, I'm not taking my shoes off in your house. Like that's one of those.
Take off that veil. I'll fucking nuke you. And that's like, that's stupid. You play by my rules or we're fucking turn your shit into glass. That constant existence of like everybody has to either conform or be wiped out of history. That is a toxic existence in which most of the species has to exist, whereas Americans live in also a prison experiment, I will call it, where we have the plantation guards that fucking think that they're living high, but they're in the prison experiment too. And that's why the more they realize they're in the prison experiment, the more they want to fucking whip down on the people tending the plantation. And it's like their mortality pushes them to do more and more rotten things, like leaving millions of dollars to a fucking dog. What is it, Loretta Helmsley? I think that's whatever the fucking lady's name is. She like left a small fortune to her animals, her dog, one dog, and then had people tending to this dog. That shit is just rotten. She's rotten to the core. If you want to do that to a human being, all these millions to a fucking animal on paper, so a human have to serve that stupid fucking dog, that's a rotten ass human being. An idea that like we have just a few rotten ass people in this country that control all of the capital and make us prostitute ourselves to fucking survive. And everybody's trying to act like we're not all prostitutes because it's not like, if you're not doing sexual favors, you're not a prostitute. Oh yeah, you're selling your body and your fucking mind. Don't delude yourself. We're all prostitutes here. So anybody who's had to like do something they didn't want to do to survive, guess what? You're a fucking prostitute for fucking capitalism. It wants to put sex workers at the bottom, so then everybody can punch down at them as a society. Oh, at least I'm not selling my ass, or I'm not selling my dick, or I'm not giving blowjobs in the alley. Well, guess what? You're selling your whole fucking body your whole fucking time anyway. So don't think you're any better than somebody who's doing sex work. So it's like this whole hierarchy of people being forced to sell our bodies and sell our minds to do shit we don't want to do just to fucking survive. So a few goddamn people can live higher than us and fly on private jets and live on yachts and make themselves think that those young girls on the yachts with them actually want to be there and aren't there because they just want to survive too and need somebody to fucking be a sugar daddy in this rotten ass fucking world. It's like they allow themselves to believe it, so then they die at least physically comfortable. But that shit's eating them up, man. And that's where I'm like, you see Elon with his little invisible fucking robes and his empire falling apart so fast, where he never thought that the fucking charade would fall apart. That shit it's crumbling so fast, but he's trying to take down the rest of the economy with him. Oh, Twitter, there's a bunch of bots, fucking Twitter bots. These AI is not that good anyway. So any time Westerners,
he just doesn't like it because he can't figure it out.
They fucking try to destroy the board. Elon can't figure it out. Fuck AI altogether. Then nobody's ever gonna figure it out. Because I couldn't have I made $100 billion, $200 billion, $300 billion, and I couldn't figure it out before my ruse fell apart. Nobody can figure it out because he thinks it was just a matter of throwing fucking money at something, because he never actually fucking invented anything in his goddamn life. He cosplayed inventor.
Yeah.
He just pretended. His daddy bought him the fucking appearance of an inventor. And everybody who's never been around a rich kid just bought into it wholesale. Oh, yeah, this kid, he fucking built himself out of nothing. Oh, you've never seen a rich kid before. Oh, you never seen somebody living off of daddy's money, building their reputation off of their dad's, and trying to make it seem like it's not out of their dad's. And his dad was a fucking grifter. Guess what? The emerald mines his dad was famous for, that shit was a grift too. They didn't even fucking exist, bro. People are so easily grifted when you can just stay ahead of the information. People think that his dad got rich with like slave labor. It's like almost better that he was a grifter, so he wasn't even involved in that necessarily. He was just pretending he was employing slave labor and had a fake ass emerald mine and grifted a bunch of people. It's not like, I'm not saying slave labor in emerald mines wasn't happening. It definitely was.
Well,
but his dad was a fucking grifter too.
That's actually kind of a delightful twist to this whole thing that I was completely unaware of.
Yeah, it's like, man, it's funny. It's funny what you find out when you start like removing curtains, lifting veils. You're like, oh shit, this isn't as bad as I thought, but it's still bad.
It's still really horrible.
It's really horrible
in a different
but not
way.
As bad as I thought, but it's still horrible in a completely different way.
well, before I could try to have some empathy or some sympathy for the people that I thought were mining away at these emeralds for the Musk Foundation or whatever. But if that didn't even happen and he was just taking money from other wealthy people,
it wasn't a Robin Hood situation though. So
but
don't get it twisted.
I'm not trying to twist it like that far.
It's like white people grifting other white people is not noble.
No.
It's just funny.
Yeah, no.
It's just hilarious.
That's the part I'm getting to. Is that it's like this is just highly amusing. Like this is actually how it happened. Really? Oh, that's
like if somebody grifts somebody and then gives it to charity and was never intending to keep any of that shit for themselves. Okay, that's actually noble. That's something.
like
We're
that
not talking
ransomware.
about that. Yeah. Or like Vitalik. I want to say Vitalik Buterin is like grifting a bunch of rich people into allowing him to take the money and funnel it into places that they never would have in if they like otherwise didn't have grifting them. So like whenever somebody launched a fund for something that they wanted to play white savior for, and then they're like, I think it was in India, I forget what it was, whatever, some white savior episode, they raised like $1 billion and then locked half of it up with Vitalik. Oh, that's what it was. They weren't these people were just trying to build their own protocol. They weren't doing anything remotely philanthropic. They were just trying to do this DeFi protocol, and they're like, oh, because Vitalik is this big name in the Ethereum space, we're going to send him half of the tokens and just lock him up with him. So we'll be like, oh, half of the protocol is using Vitalik's public identity as the counterweight. Well, I guess he didn't appreciate that and sold all the fucking tokens, and he gave them charity. So it was like, when people were like trying to use they were trying to use his clout as a way to sell their platform. He then, some people would say rug pulled them, but that's not the way it happened.
No, he was buttering other people's bread. That's good stuff.
No, well, he was not complicit. They sent this shit to him involuntarily. So they involuntarily made him the counterweight for their protocol without even asking him if he's gonna not sell the shit. So like, yeah, we're gonna turn half of our protocol into just hoping Vitalik doesn't sell it, and then he fucking sold it and gave all of it to charity. So that's where I'm like, somebody doing that is completely different than just grifting other white people and happening to be white and then keeping all the money for themselves. Like, I know Vitalik, the way he lives, I've seen him off camera. He does not live like a billion, and he's no longer a billionaire because he wasn't trying to preserve that shit. He gave away a lot of fucking money. And this is not like, oh, Vitalik's the greatest person. It's more so, I was talking to a friend yesterday about this. I feel like Vitalik got exploited by his father. He's definitely on the spectrum. If you see Vitalik like off camera, he's like constantly stimming. The more, like, the bigger the crowd, the more anxiety the dude gets. Like,
even on camera, you can tell. Yeah,
but you can tell he does not be in crowds of people talking about this shit anytime he's doing it. So I feel like the more I learned about him, the more I felt bad. Like, who feel bad for a billionaire? It's like, no, trust me, it's not just some dude living high on fucking private jets and like destroying the planet. Like, he's giving away more money than most people ever make, not to justify it, but he's definitely not living in a way that people probably assume, which is also why if I ever talk about him, I always go out of the way to make sure I'm like, I don't want to make it seem like I hate Vitalik or I'm misrepresenting the way he operates, because if anybody's like, Robinhood ain't shit compared to Vitalik at this point.
Yeah.
Like, nobody should be talking about Robinhood when Vitalik exists. Let's get that clear. There's no possible way that with one person and the sheriff of Loxley, there's no possible way that Robinhood did any, like, not even remotely what Vitalik has done in the face of the opposition that he had. Because further, Vitalik could have just been selfish. He could have been a selfish ass motherfucker that just like, oh, I want to drive like every Ferrari and every fucking supercar, but he's not that person. So when I see the things that he does, I'm like, he does some things right and he does some things wrong, but I have never gotten the sense that there's one malicious bone in that dude's body. Like,
Man, I just think
think that
he's
like
abusing. Like he you're right. He's been wielded as a figurehead, and he probably shouldn't have been. But there have been
he didn't do that though. He did not do that.
Oh, I know he didn't do that to himself. It was the Ethereum Foundation that did all that stuff because
and his dad,
yeah,
Peter Thiel.
But that's the thing about all that like it was always amusing to me is that the crypto journalist community on the internet, they would swing so hard one way or another on like they were just waiting for him to say something for a while. And I think it was after like 2 years of like the next update coming, it's going to do all these things, but it never came. And then proof of stake is coming, except it still hasn't happened, and the difficulty bomb, and all this stuff. And he's clearly trying to explain very complex math, like really, really complex math to people who probably will never understand math at that level. And so
but he was wrong on some.
I know that was the thing. He was wrong. He was wrong about quite a few things, but he was right about a few things too. But he's trying to explain this really advanced technology to people that don't. I don't think they're ever going to understand computer science sufficiently to really understand what he's talking about. He's talking about such high level shit at some points where it's like, oh, hold on, I gotta start this section over again and take notes. And some of it turns out to be bullshit, and some of it's real. But he's also
but the problem, he dropped out. So
Yeah.
the issue is he's learning as he went along, but he's being painted as this fucking child genius
Yep.
who then gets entrusted with building this machine with inherent problems that people who are educated in computer science and game theory and fucking sociology were pointing out. But because other people were not educated in those fields, and they're also rich enough to make it seem like, oh, I've made fucking money, so I'm smart enough to believe in this kid, even though I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Or what he's talking about.
Or what he's talking about. Those people dominated the discourse, and then it became impossible to actually put up any critique against what Vitalik was saying. He didn't do that.
No.
And this is where I know those things happen, so I don't blame him. But at the same time, it's like when you're a kid and you become like a god king of a tech company, or it's not a tech company, like a tech foundation that runs what people think is like this revolutionary new thing because they don't actually understand what the fuck it is yet. There's a lot of things at play that make a person who's then also on the spectrum easily vulnerable to manipulation, especially when their father is someone who would manipulate them.
Yeah.
His dad definitely gives off creeper, I'm fucking riding off like my son's success because I was a failed version and I'm using my almost success to channel it into him. It's like the sports Tiger Woods father or Serena Williams father,
Joe
or somebody
Jackson.
or Joe Jackson, or it's like Joe Jackson but with tech.
Yeah.
And a kid who's very much on the spectrum, who's also probably having too much fun when he's not in front of crowds, that then he's not going to ask for help because then he's like so busy with work that's not physical that it makes it. Dude's clearly okay. Let me say this. Watch how I phrase this. I've seen him close enough to know he doesn't monitor his nutrition. He doesn't monitor his physical activity as well as he should for as much as he's in front of a computer and traveling. So those things are ungodly, just like destructive on the human body, and you have to take drastic countermeasures to prevent the body from breaking down from all of that sitting and all of that compression. And I know he's not doing those looking at him. And like I said, I've seen him off camera in person enough for like long enough to know that it's like, yeah, it's not like he's eating like chicken nuggets and shit, but dude is not like the shining symbol of health. I'll say it that way. And it's not to say, oh,
No, he
again,
looks
I'm
like
not,
he needs
I'm
a
not
hamburger.
diagnosing him. It's not even like, I'm not trying to say what he needs to eat so much as I know
or a sandwich.
when he's like, you don't actually have a lot of choice when you're in these situations.
Yeah.
So he's like getting.
He's probably just eating like the fruit cup and some chips.
And it's gonna be more than that. It's not like they're starving him, but again, it's like you can't eat fucking filet mignon every day. Even if they just assume they're everywhere he goes, they feed him steak or fucking lobster. You can't eat that shit. You can't eat shrimp all the time. You get iodine poison. So there's like all these things. You can't eat the same thing all the time. And when you travel a lot and when you work a lot, it's really easy to not get a variety of nutrition or a variety of exercise to make sure that you're not destroying your body. And that's where I'm like, I mean, Elon's the same way. Like that type of obsessive person who's seemingly so obsessed with mental work that they sacrifice their body and then they sacrifice their social relationships. Well, that shit doesn't work. It doesn't work. And you see people not being able to sustain this shit long term. Like Bill Gates' fucking relationship fell apart. Guess what? You can't, even if you do it, you can't do it forever. Even if you try to quit early enough, your shit's somewhere suffering. Your family or your friendships or your body. So this idea that these people that have been persisting with in the tech space, it's falling apart in front of everybody's eyes, like disastrously. So then when I see Vitalik proposing soulbound tokens, and now he's like triggered the evangelicals because they're basically like, oh, this is the sign of the apocalypse, the revelation. You're saying you're gonna bind people's souls to tokens. This is what they were warned about in Revelation. So his little God King shit is, I don't know if he's trying to blow it up or if he's just so dissociated from mainstream America that he does not, because he's Canadian. So he's like,
he wants that so bad he's gonna sink the ship.
Yeah, maybe that kind of what it felt like when I was reading the paper. Other people, oh, this is so mind-blowing stuff and this is amazing. I'm like, it sounds cool, but this is a horrible way to describe things, and it already exists. So they're just at this point, the way that they're, I feel like, setting themselves up to be burned down. Like, you can't burn Ethereum down physically. Like, that's not what I mean. But it's like they're setting themselves up to have the right-wing pitchfork and torches mob come after them and, like, shout down Ethereum now.
I mean, it's a really incredibly complex slot machine.
I mean, it's not because slot machines aren't usually fucking Turing complete. So
yeah, that's true.
That's where I'm like, you can't discount building a Turing complete machine that runs globally. That's not it's to
more
be
than a slot
discounted.
machine.
But the problem is you didn't need to build it the way they did, didn't need to make it monetized, and a lot of the things they did have inherent problems that they didn't want to hear. So it's like the engineering feat they pulled off is then undermined by the mistakes that they made, but only people who are versed in a lot of things are gonna see that, and they're gonna be shouted down by people trying to make money off of it.
Yeah,
So that's like
that's why I call it a slot
that's why I end up
machine.
feeling, that's why I end up feeling bad for Vitalik, because capitalism's gonna turn any good idea into a fucking slot machine. Oh, you're a good musician? Well, now it's a crapshoot if you're popular, because they exploited anything and everything they could to sound like you. So now anybody who tries to fucking play, like somebody could learn to play guitar really well. It's a crapshoot if they become popular, because capitalism has exploited the guitar player. Nobody needs a fucking new guitar player, just like we don't need any more guns. We don't need any new guitar players because of capitalism, not because guitar is dead, but because capitalism has exploited any avenue of people doing guitar for the sake of guitar because they wanted to make money off of it. If you want to do guitar for the sake of guitar, just do it in your house now. That's awesome. But nobody is like out in public clamoring for a new guitarist because of capitalism. And that's where I mean, like, this burnout of slot machine. Oh, we can somebody looks like Elvis. Maybe they don't sound like Elvis. Maybe we can make money off of them. Pull the lever. Somebody sounds like Elvis, but they don't look like Elvis. Pull the lever. Somebody sounds like Michael Jackson. Pull the lever. Prince. Pull the lever. Britney Spears. Pull the lever. Every fucking time they're like, oh, we can try to do a crapshoot. How many Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera clones were we dead, and none of them got successful? They probably all felt shitty about themselves, but it's because capitalism was trying to just clone Britney Spears and clone Christina Aguilera for so long that then it was like, oh, now we got a new Mandy Moore. Now we'll try to clone Mandy Moore. Pull the lever. It's like I
wish I had a lever sound effect right now. Oh, shit.
Well, I wrote
no, it's true. They're like, I was trying to think about, like, you know, there are some bands out there that are incredible. I mean, phenomenal, incredible musicianship. The compositions are a little modern, and they don't sound anything like the guitar music of the 90s or the 80s or even the early 2000s. But this stuff is not like, it's unlike anything that you would find on MTV or the radio or whatever. I have to go looking for it to find it on YouTube. And so, like, there's an Australian band called Pliny. It's the guy's name, and he's a phenomenal musician. Like Steve Vai talked about him being, like, you know, the herald of a new generation of guitar playing. And then there's a band called Tesseract, and they're all incredible. And these are like guys that grew up listening to, like, Steve Vai or Dream Theater or Joe Satriani, and they love that stuff, obviously. But I mean, I know Dream Theater can fill a room. They can fill a theater or a stadium or whatever. But they're not like, they're an old band. They've been around for a long time. They've been around for like 30 years, maybe more. So I don't actually know when they formed, and they're amazing. And these young bands, like, they're chasing that same kind of, you know, goal of excellence, technical mastery of the instrument, theoretical mastery of their genre of music that they're pursuing, like songwriting, all that stuff. They're doing it, but these things aren't really. I mean, it's hard to listen to sometimes. You got to be into it, or you have to have been introduced in such a way that it's like, oh yeah, this is really cool. And that's hard when there isn't a mainstream culture that can do that. And those things, they exist in, like, shadows or in closed networks. And you're right. There's no clear-cut path anymore for that kind of musician.
Well, and it's like, even like somebody goes through a music school. Joshua Bell's like the last big name to come out of IU music school. I'm sure everyone who's come out of there ends up placed, but nobody knows who the fuck they are, in the sense of, it's not that people become musicians for fame or notoriety at all. But when capitalism forces people to make a living, then it's like I'm not going to put time and effort into something without being able to ensure that I can continue doing that while earning a living. And then it forces people to start selling their craft in order to make sure that they can keep a roof over their head. And then eventually, these people are just playing music that they don't actually care about and is being requested, and that puts like the person who has the money to make the request in charge of the creation, and it feels like that's the ultimate cap on creation
Well, I think a lot of
at
bands
this point.
are assembled, and a lot of bands are comprised of performers first. Like that's why when you look at the songwriting credits for a lot of music, it's there might be one person in the band who actually gets credited, and then there's a completely different writing team involved, and that's for an actual band. Like some bands still organically compose entire albums together. I'm sure they still exist, but they're not mainstream. They're not breaking the Billboard charts or pop charts, or they're not on Clear Channel. And it's because they're not part of that whole songwriting production network. I think that we're way past the era that, you know, some friends can get some instruments together in a garage and have a garage band and actually become a real functional band anymore. I think that's like that's the gem among stones kind of situation. And the reality is most people are rocks. And that's fine. But you're right. People do go to school to become musicians now. They go to like Musicians Institute in California, or they go to Berkeley in Boston. They might go to an actual music school at a university, but if you were to look at the alumni of Musicians Institute in Hollywood, you would see that everyone who attends that school is either, like you were saying, they're placed somewhere. They're working in a studio, and a lot of times studio musicians end up in a band playing somebody else's music, and they're exceptionally competent musicians. They were trained in Hollywood by the best, and they're not generally writing those songs. I think one of the last bands that I can think of that was like a studio band that had like really serious commercial success is Toto with that song Africa. I bless the rains down in Africa. Like that was like 34, almost 40 years ago. Maybe Garbage was a studio band too. I know that it was like two producers who really started that, but they're not really a band. They hire musicians to back them. They're like, they're singer songwriters at that level, at least in my opinion. Like, I mean, I'm sure the singer songwriters tour with the same band because they get used to playing with the same musicians. But those guys aren't, the band members in those groups aren't writing the songs.
Yeah, maybe Oasis.
Yeah, Oasis.
Because then, like,
but those guys can't stand each other. They're barely a band.
Right, and that's what I mean.
Real bands love each other. They can be around each other like indefinitely.
But is it because they're not successful? And that's like this phenomenon of a band is a strange thing in that when people end up becoming successful as individuals, it can make or break a band.
Yeah.
And sometimes like the person as an individual pull a band to the forefront where they weren't successful. But I'm like, well, I guess it depends, but George Clinton is a great example, and like Bootsy Collins, and then like how Bootsy was not necessarily famous when he was playing with James Brown, but he became more famous as he. And let's not make this about fame so much as capacity for people to like come for that person's sound rather than wanting that person to play a sound they're already familiar with. Because after a certain point, people wanted to hear Bootsy, instead of Bootsy playing other people's music.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm not
Dude, Bootsy's one of my favorite musician performer. He's just amazing. I saw him on a stage with Bernie Worrell and George Clinton in Ohio when I was a senior in high school. And that dude has so much presence. Like Bootsy just wearing like black leather pants and a cowboy hat, not even trying to stand out, like just in terms of wardrobe. Like he stands out just as much as George Clinton because he has that kind of presence. He just glows. He's amazing. And he can just grab a bass at any point and play the funkiest shit ever. He's incredible. Like all of his rubber band stuff. I love that stuff. That rubbery bouncing bass sound that he has. It like springs back at you. If you have enough sound system, it's just incredible. It's like if a ball pit was all bouncy balls.
or even it's like nobody goes to or would go to see Metallica play Led Zeppelin. Like nobody would, like, if Metallica was doing cover music, people would be upset. They want to see Metallica play their own music.
So speaking of that, this is
a no-name band.
This is really funny that you say Metallica. That, because during intermissions, when Lars or James have to go, like, drain their bladder or whatever, Kirk Hammett and Robert Trujillo, the bass player guy, they like get up on the mic and they do like their blues jam rock band covers. It's just the two of them jamming for a bit, but they play like other people's music, and some people really hate it and like are booing, and some people love it because they're like, oh yeah, these old guys are just having fun and jamming it out. It's great.
Yeah, those people are contrarians. The ones that are like cheering it on. It's like, dude, literally nobody buys a Metallica ticket for them to play some other people's shit.
Yeah.
I'd be pissed. I'd be super pissed if I went to a Metallica show. I mean, of course, this is intermission, but again, it's like, I didn't come to a Metallica show to fucking hear you play blues. That's not that's not cool. That's bait and switch, and I'd be super pissed. So that's why I'm like, the people cheering it on, that's the type of shit where I'm like, they're just being contrarian and acting like they didn't get fucking ripped off. I mean, and obviously it's fun at that moment, but if that's where Metallica shows up and they're like, you know what, today we're gonna play bluegrass and a little bit of blues
and some Tejano. We're gonna play some Tejano and some traditional mariachi music.
People would end up throwing shit at the fucking stage by the end. Rightfully so. And that's why I'm like, but again, this is where I'm saying the crowd's expectations are different when they know an artist versus when they don't know an artist.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? 13th Floor, they did rap cover band where I'm like, nobody gives a fuck about 13th Floor or their actual music. They want to hear 90s rap at the party, and if they can't get a 90s rapper, they'll take a cover band.
Yeah,
that shit was it was always weird to me that they had rap cover bands, but people would rather hear a rap cover band than something new if given the choice. It seems like at least capitalism would make you want to believe that. I think when people have to spend money, they don't want to be surprised with something that they are not happy with, so then they opt for something that they like or that they know they'll like, so then it's like they know they're not going to waste their money, but then that becomes these vicious cycles.
Yeah, but people buy $5 hamburgers that they don't have time to enjoy. People buy $10 hamburgers that they can't possibly have enough time to enjoy. Who can enjoy a fucking hamburger in 30 minutes? Unless you're just scarfing it down. And I've done that before, just inhaled my lunch because I had to get somewhere and I was pressed for time. I've been there. It sucks. But like, it's easy to spend, $15, $20 at like Chipotle. That's real easy.
Oh yeah, easy.
Like, you can, two people at Chipotle expect to spend $40 if you, no more, if you want to have a drink and chips. And that's fast food. I've seen people inhale those burritos just like a fucking vacuum. Sheila and I went to Chipotle not too long ago. She hadn't been there before, and we both got the bowl and chips because that's like super nachos. And I got 2 full meals out of that, and so did she. Like, all totaled, it probably took us, an hour and a half, 2 hours each to consume our meals. And I enjoyed it. But I don't see how, if I had been rushing that, all I could have... No, I would have been bloated and uncomfortable later.
Yeah, I had a lunch, like a work lunch with a friend, and they bought food for the office. And the serving that I had ended up being enough for a whole nother meal afterwards, where I'm like, I can imagine trying to eat all of that in one sitting.
But you see people do it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the serving size that Americans have grown accustomed to are so insane where obviously that is what contributed to the obesity problem. But I think people are starting to cut back. I was out yesterday at the track, and there were not a ton of obese people in a way where in Indiana, you would normally see way more obese people than that. But I think people are, I feel as if people are starting to take their health more seriously in general, even if they don't wear masks or some shit. I think.
Well, COVID was targeting obese people for a while.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, maybe that was the kick in the pants that some people needed to start taking their weight seriously. And this is really serious stuff. There are like broader, there's like a domino effect, like for people who are unable to control portion size. There's like a huge economic impact, not just to health or to in terms of what people are actually spending money on, but like long term there are health complications that just we can't even imagine them, because you can't tell how fast somebody's cartilage is deteriorating or how strong their ligaments actually are, like connective tissue. And these things are all diet related. Like, you can't build good connective tissue if you have a shitty diet. It just doesn't work. I don't care how many planks somebody does. If all they eat is chips and Slim Jims, actually, I bet there have been several attempted professional wrestlers who survived on Slim Jims and chips, and they probably did just fine, and meth.
Good advised diet. But as I see Impossible coming out with more options, they're coming out with what is it? Fucking Polish sausages.
Oh yeah.
So that means I feel like they're getting closer to hot dogs.
Well, from what I understand,
bratwurst. Sorry.
From what I understand, the pork substitute that they created for the Chinese market tested well.
Mm.
So it's just a matter of time before they figure out how to get production up to scale. If they can get it up to scale for a Chinese market, then they can definitely scale it for American market.
Well, chicken nuggets, well, fake chicken nuggets are in such a place where the average American wouldn't be able to tell.
Oh yeah.
I guarantee.
Oh yeah. Totally.
The fake meat, like the fake ground, is in a place where the average American wouldn't be able to tell. Like their palates are so bad because they're eating
Mostly
super
seasoning.
fatty shit. Yeah, it's like in the seasoning. So seasoned correctly, I would guarantee most Americans wouldn't know the difference. So I do think we're at a point where we don't really need as much meat in the diet as or as much animal-based meat. Because if they want to do burgers, great, just fucking do an Impossible. If you want to do a sausage patty, great, do an Impossible. Because we're there. But you have these stupid fucking Luddite religious people that are more concerned with their Bible than destroying the planet or subjugating animals.
I think for me the final test will be whether or not they can create a boneless wing. It doesn't necessarily have to have like muscle texture in the correct orientation to be a wing, but I want that like bone and marrow flavor. And I know they've come really close with the nuggets and with like it's kind of like a chicken breast, but it's not. That stuff's really close. I guess it's ground, but that's just you're right. It's really close, but it's that final step of nailing whatever is in like the marrow. I think that's like the final frontier of like a chicken of an impossible chicken. With like pork, my estimate is that it's gonna be getting that getting that fat flavor profile to it to emerge. Because they pretty much nailed it with beef. Like
Well, pork's super lean for the most part.
yeah, but it's got that really kind of, I can only really describe it as like a round, fatty flavor profile to it. It's kind of sweet.
I think what a lot of people associate as being fat is really the sodium, because a lot of again a lot of pork is actually super lean.
With pork, what I'm thinking it's kind of like a sweet flavor. It's less salt, but more sweet.
You thinking of honey baked ham?
No, I'm just talking about like if you get like a butterfly cut of pork or like a tenderloin or a loin, and you cut out a chunk of it and cook that up. There's this kind of like sweet flavor that comes along with it. It's like my favorite part of pork. And it comes out if you fry it, or pan fry it, or if you cook it on a grill, if you cook it in a soup, it's there. And ham is especially sweet. Even before they do the honey, I've always found pork to be like like the sweetest meat in terms of like the profile.
I mean, I don't know where you're getting your pork, because that's what I'm like. I know a lot of pork gets treated with sugar or honey, but as far as like when it's untreated, I I would never describe it as sweet. Like most certainly savory. And that's where there's definitely fattier cuts, but that's kind of where I'm like, again, I understand when it gets treated and it gets cooked, and a lot of times it ends up sweet, but that's where I'm like, I don't think I would.
I mean, I'm not really, unless I explicitly add honey or sugar to meat. I generally don't add honey or sugar to meats. I tend to go mostly with like vinegars and salts and peppers. But pork has always had this. I mean, to me, has always had this like. Maybe sweet's the wrong word. It's definitely sweeter than like beef. Beef has always been really kind of on the.
Definitely less gamey, and that's what I mean. I guess like if we're talking, because gaminess is one thing where the more wild an animal, the gamier flavor I've always found, as far as I can tell. But I've never really tasted. Wild boar has a gamey flavor.
Yeah,
but
so does
pork
lamb.
does not.
Yeah, pork is ungamey. Lamb can be gamey.
It can be really gamey.
Goat can be gamey.
Goat is usually gamey, but not always, and it
I
depends
think
on
if it's
how
if it's a young goat, then it's less gamey.
right. Like the fattier the goat, the less gamey.
Yeah.
It comes down to the leanness. That's where again, the leanness is usually what contributes to the gaminess of the meat, and then a lot of actually ends up being really lean, which is where it's all okay. I mean, again, I'm not an authority on flavor. More, I'm just saying from my perspective, I would say pork is more like a juicier turkey than sweet. Like it's like as if the flavor that exists in turkey, if it had more juice behind it, that's where I would put ham when there's no sodium content. Because then it's like
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
hard to.
quite chicken. It's not quite chicken. It's slightly gamier than.
I think of turkey as like if chicken was all dark meat,
Yeah, yeah,
and
pretty much.
yeah, and then duck is like if chicken was all dark meat and really fatty.
Right. Yeah, that's about right from what I've experienced. So, I mean, again, I don't, I
To me, like
again, I've never
beef fat
tried
has
all
like a
things,
profile
but
that's like it's it's definitely strong. Like it's not the flavor of the fat that profile has more it's just stronger.
well, because then okay, with like aged ham, when you have something that's not treated with anything but salt and age, it ends up being creamy flavor,
Yeah.
and it's almost like a buttercream, and that's where
Ham's really cool. All
it is.
almost everything that comes off of a pig is delicious. There are only some parts of it that are like kind of like questionable. But most of the common cuts are really good. Like even like what are the ham hocks? I've only had ham hocks like one time, and it was really surreal because they were like pickled, you know. And so I'm not sure if I was getting like the right kind of flavor out of it. But some people also eat chicken feet, and I've never been into that either. So
Oh, so here's the thing. Apparently, all ham has a slight underlying sweetness. So I think I mean, obviously, not all ham is, or not all pork is made into ham.
yeah,
But if you're thinking of cooked hams, even if it's not roasted in honey, it's still
yeah.
going to have an underlying sweetness.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Ham is always, well, ham is even sweeter than like most pork products. I've always felt
Yeah.
like there's just something like it's the sweet meat to me for whatever reason. Like whereas with like a good glaze on chicken, or a kind of a sweet barbecue sauce on some beef, that's like good stuff. But I never felt like it needed to add sugar to ham or pork. Not to say that I don't. I mean, I will definitely use some sauce on some stir fry, and sometimes that stuff contains sugar, and I'm cool with that. And sugaring the bacon is good. That's how you make candied bacon. Just
Yeah, that stuff is amazing. That shit is
and dangerous too. You can eat a lot of it and then
easily
have to take a nap.
very easily end up eating a lot of that. I'm surprised it doesn't make it onto more sandwiches.
Candied
This
bacon.
seems to,
You know, not many. I guess I can't speak for everyone. 'Cause, all tastes are different. But if you like kimchi, a kimchi bacon sandwich is actually delicious. And a kimchi bacon burger is incredible. Like kimchi and bacon, my dad figured this out. It's got the Napa cabbage style kimchi, or the cabbage style kimchi. It's got this good combination of crunch, kind of like when people put coleslaw on a pulled pork sandwich. It's kind of got that kind of combination of cabbage, but it's also hot, and then it's also a pickle at the same time.
Actually, got bulgogi the other day and made a bulgogi sandwich the next day, which I feel like
that's a super
banh
sandwich.
mi. Oh yeah, but I feel like banh mi is basically a bulgogi sandwich.
Yeah.
After eating, it's like, this feels strangely like banh mi. So I feel like Vietnamese, not that they stole it, but that they were like, this is like an easy win. And fucking made that sandwich before Koreans
the French were like the masters of colonialism. So
they fucking cornered that Asian sandwich market real quick. Because I guess what is it? Bao balls. I don't really. Do you see Chinese sandwiches in America? Like stuffed bread,
okay, so we've done the is it a sandwich thing a couple times, and I've actually been thinking about this because I'm not sure a dumpling is a sandwich.
No, it's not. That's like the closest thing.
Yeah, but
not.
So, bao isn't a sandwich. Dumplings aren't sandwiches.
No. But that's like the closest thing I could even think of. I've seen.
Because Chinese pastries are a thing. Bread is a thing in China.
Of course, yeah.
But when I think about it, I've never come across an institutional Chinese sandwich.
Yeah, and that's where I'm like,
oh wow.
I have just never seen one. Like,
well, it's
like
maybe the Chinese were like, hey, the Vietnamese have banh mi. We don't have to develop our own. We'll just use theirs.
But it's not like they're serving banh mi in the Chinese restaurants.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Well, they just go down to the Vietnamese restaurant.
Right. Well, I was going to say, I only even discovered banh mi after going to a Vietnamese restaurant. I didn't discover for myself, learning of it in that the way that I had been presented with like Asian foods in general, I was like under the assumption that they just didn't do sandwich like style foods because of the American representation. But it's like then you see like, oh yeah, clearly there's some sandwiches across the diaspora, but like it would be interesting to see the different Asian sandwiches that exist, because I'm sure that there's multiple kinds out there, but it's like you just don't see Asian restaurants having bread on their menus in a way that then would make it viable.
It's the Rugamo or Rugamo. It looks like a hamburger, or it looks like a Philly cheesesteak, but the filling looks like Chinese food.
Oh, that looks amazing.
Yeah,
holy shit.
2,000-year-old Chinese sandwich recipe.
Whoa. What? See, this is the type of shit they're keeping from Americans, bro.
I think the Chinese may have invented the... No, dig it. I think the Chinese may have invented the panini.
Yeah, that's what it
looks like. They invented the grilled cheese sandwich too, then.
One of the world's oldest type of hamburgers. Whoa. Yeah.
The Chinese invented the hamburger.
It's unknown. It's still unknown where people started stuffing bread with meat first. But yeah, they've clearly. But again, I've never seen a Chinese sandwich. Clearly, they're hiding this shit from us.
And that's such bullshit too, because this thing looks so good.
Yeah,
Like all the
man.
even the cheap examples look pretty good, but the fancy ones look so good. We've been lied to this whole time,
Oh yeah,
and they've been holding out on us this whole time.
man. Bullshit. That's some bullshit. But again, in my mind, I'm like, I know they have sandwiches. Obviously, that's like not the issue. It's more so, why don't we get them? Why are we getting all of the same Chinese dishes at every fucking Chinese restaurant? As if they don't have some bomb ass sandwiches that apparently they're keeping on the mainland.
Maybe England is paying them money to sustain the mythology of the Earl of Sandwich.
Damn, Japanese milk bread. I cannot even fathom a sandwich on milk bread right now. That's like, see, this is shit where Americans are being lied to. We just get sushi. I mean, obviously not, but
holy cow,
that's like all Americans know about fucking Japanese cooking is sushi, man.
I'm looking at a picture of a Japanese fruit sandwich. It's like bread, fruit, and then like it looks like cream cheese and some other stuff, and it looks delicious. And then here's another one. It's an egg salad sandwich. It has quarter of a hard-boiled egg tucked inside of it. It looks gorgeous. And some of these other sandwiches have they're like a rainbow of colors. I mean, obviously Japanese food is the Japanese have mastered presentation, but this stuff is incredible. It almost looks like space food, but good. Like when I imagine
really good.
When I imagine like what people in space would be eating, these like cubes of food. These are cubes of food that look delicious. They're definitely not serving this on the fucking International Space Station. Oh my goodness, flowers out of fruit in a sandwich. What the crap?
Korean street toast.
Korean street
Man,
toast?
Korean egg drop sandwich. There's all kinds of shit. Man. I'm not saying, like, I would never try to go to a different country just to do sandwiches.
I mean,
But if I could, I would.
If somebody was willing to finance the trip, I would document every single aspect of it, and we could write a book about it and give people a Sandwiches of Asia tour guide. And I think that it can make. I'm willing to go through the process of traveling to numerous sandwich shops and sampling their wares and taking pictures. Just throwing that out there, internet. And we will be objective about it, because we know that after. I mean, we're probably going to end up eating 10,000 sandwiches, right? You got to if you want to get into like the Asian halls of glory. 10,000 sandwiches. Well, that's just a Chinese thing. Well, we will eat 10,000 sandwiches across Asia, so that everyone else knows where to go and what to order. I'm serious. That sounds like a good job.
Sounds like an awesome job.
Yeah, man, traveling Asia to sample sandwiches. That's like the opposite of prostituting oneself. It's like, hold on, you're gonna pay me to eat sandwiches? Okay. All I gotta do is write a book and take pictures? Fuck yeah, I'll even make a movie about it. Shit.
Oh, God.
I mean, that's just between the big three, between Japan, China, and Korea. Like, once we get into Southeast Asia, we know banh mi exists. I'm sure that there are some other Southeast Asian sandwiches out there that nobody has any clue about, that don't use anything that looks like traditional bread at all either.
Oh man, Laotian sandwiches look bomb. Oh my god. Woo. Yeah, Laos apparently. Yeah, Laos got some sandwiches that look. Woo.
Yeah, it's like a.
I'm really intrigued by this like Asian sandwich phenomenon now that we are not privy to in America.
Why have they been hiding this
This is
from us?
fucking amazing. I'm like glad that there's shit that we don't have. I mean, not to say that I'd really love a goddamn Laotian
I want one of these cow
sandwich.
G. Straight up, I want one of these
But
cow
I
G.
love that Laotian sandwiches exist and you can't just go buy them. Capitalism has not yet conquered the Asian sandwich. This is actually amazing to me.
This is
Not because I'm like intrigued that, oh, they got sandwiches. Like, no, there's like a whole sandwich culture that they're not selling out. This is not being sold out in a way that other things are like. I guess if you can get along with like the Kung Pao chicken, the General Tso's chicken, you don't need to give them the sandwiches.
Yep.
That's what it feels like.
No, what I think what's really happened is that what these sandwiches are the evolution of working class food and street food for people that have to work. And so as societies and cultures become more affluent, their food quality will improve as well. And I think a lot of the things like the General Tso's chicken or Gong Pao chicken or Dragon Phoenix or insert Chinese dish that you can get at any Americanized Chinese restaurant, those all started out as high cuisine, and they've just kind of filtered down during the race to the bottom to feed the well, I'll just go to a buffet crowd, or to satisfy the person that wants a slightly fancier version of the buffet meal. And so there's nothing wrong with the state Chinese restaurant, the state sponsored Chinese restaurant, the one that has the same shellacked pictures of shellacked food that every other Chinese restaurant has, with the same faded image too, backlit image, like those. That's like the state. It's just state sponsored Chinese food, but these things are unique. I don't think. I mean, it'd be like, why would somebody open up a Subway in Southeast Asia or anywhere outside of America, really? Like, I'm sure that there's a sandwich culture in Europe, but their sandwiches are probably really similar to ours, because our sandwiches probably were derived from their sandwiches until there was a disparity in ingredients. But when I look at these Laotian sandwiches, I see a lot of ingredients that are kind of familiar looking, but in kind of different combinations. Some of them, oh man, some look like amazing.
Filipino style breakfast sandwiches.
Oh man,
Yeah, I'm like really intrigued now by all of these different Asian sandwiches.
yeah. See, these Filipino breakfast,
it's like different.
yeah, these Filipino breakfast sandwiches look like the most highborn version of the fast food stuff that we are offered from McDonald's, except this looks like it was made with real ingredients. Like, this egg has some burnt crisp edge to it, whereas it's not perfect. It doesn't look perfect, like it was spat out by a machine.
Yeah. Ooh. Man. All that said, it's like
Even their egg salad sandwiches look good. They look really similar to ours, though, so I'm not going to wax on about it.
I think there's some ability to understand what you're looking at in an imperfect shaped egg. Like, you don't want an egg to be perfectly round. That's when something's wrong.
I mean, the only eggs that I've ever seen in my life that were perfectly round were made out of plastic.
Yeah, unless it's like poached in a container that is perfectly round and it's specifically poached that like, or cooked. You can cook an egg in a metal.
You can,
or it don't have to be metal. In a shape.
You can
But
poach an egg in a teacup with like a couple tablespoons of water in 45 seconds, and it comes out perfect.
yeah, it's like there's ways to cook perfectly round eggs. I don't mean to say that it's impossible. More so, when you see perfectly round eggs in capitalism, it's usually because they're produced in a way that you don't actually want to eat that. And it's kind of like when people become accustomed to that artificially round egg that is also probably stripped of the nutrients because it's been cooked and then frozen and then it's going to be recooked, and having that
Oh,
custom taste is like a lot of Americans probably have never eaten a fresh egg that was never pasteurized and heated up first before it was cooked and frozen and then recooked again. Like I would bet money probably 50 to 60% of Americans have never actually eaten a fresh egg.
there's a sandwich trend where the sandwich maker is creating a square scrambled egg. It's square and has sharp edges, and it definitely looks like a giant slice of butter. Oh man. Oh, it's because they're baked. Okay. Okay. I wouldn't eat that. It doesn't look natural. It looks mess. It looks like a machine spat it out. It looks like it was extruded, like a like a.
Well, when people get used to food that is perfectly shaped artificially, then they start to live in an artificially constructed world in which they don't understand where the meat comes from. So it's okay for them to eat meat multiple times a day because they've completely disconnected from the idea that every time they eat meat, an animal had to die, not just like, oh, one animal per four sandwiches. Like, no, because of the way this works, every time you eat a sandwich, it's like basically that person guaranteeing another animal died for the meal. And it's only because of the way that our system's inefficient, but that person has no idea because they just see a fucking round patty, a perfectly round hamburger patty, a perfectly circular hamburger patty. That it's like weirdly uh, the the dissonance that gets created from having perfectly shaped food. There's like an effect that I don't even think people realize is there.
I'm trying to imagine a perfectly shaped strawberry. I don't think that exists. Or, I mean, I can imagine like a perfectly shaped carrot, but it's a toy for a dog.
Right. Yeah, it's not
Um,
real.
I'd be afraid if bread looked too consistent on the outside. I'd think that it wasn't baked right. Like if a tortilla had a perfectly replicated texture and across all tortillas, if they were all identical, I would think that they were made out of plastic and that they were a toy and not edible.
Yeah,
But
it gets to. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, but a wafer, like the confection, those I or like an ice cream cone. Those things have to be well. No, actually, ice cream cones can be all messed up, and I still love them. But wafers, like when they start getting messed up and deteriorated, there's something about them that's lost. In that, I mean, granted, I'm going to eat it anyways. But the for that in that instant when they're still like perfect looking, then it's like an extra special confection. I don't know. What were you gonna say?
I don't know. Yeah, just perfectly shaped food feels too unnatural for someone who's not conditioned into the unnatural machine cycle of consumption. That's where again it's like it's hard, I think, to eat real food around people who are constantly consuming like low quality shit, because then they saw that egg irregularly shaped and it's like, well, there might be shells in that because they didn't cook it, they didn't cook it ahead of time. And it's like, well, this person is too concerned with shells being in their egg rather than the freshness of it, and they're concerned about the wrong thing. Like, you might get a piece of shell because somebody just cracked an egg and it's fresh. Well, that happens ever so often. And yeah, if they're really good and they saw it, they get it out in time. But sometimes you get a little bit of shell because it's a freshly cracked egg. That's part of freshly cracked eggs, that cooking them ahead of time and perfectly shaping them tries to make people feel like, oh, if I go buy this sandwich, I won't get a shell in my. If I get a shell in it, I'll get another one for free. And it's like, well, that's not the way food's supposed to exist. So this notion of turning animals into these things to be exchanged when it was undercooked or something because the person a shell in it, and now you go back, send this back to the kitchen, send me another dead animal. That if people had to frame it that way every time they ordered food, nobody would do that shit. Like there'd be obviously inhumane people who have no problem like, oh yeah, fuck this stupid pig. Like, those people obviously exist. But what I mean is, in civilized society, it would be unacceptable for people to constantly talking about, oh, this dead animal wasn't good enough. I need another dead animal. Give me another dead cow, because the first dead cow you made was slightly pink in the middle.
This dead
because
cow
it was
is too pink.
Too close to
Bring
living.
me another.
Because when it got killed and then you cooked it for me to eat, then the person who cooked it just didn't pay quite enough attention to this dead cow. So can you please bring me another dead cow? If we had to like do that, nobody would go through all that shit when you just be like, yeah, bring me a burger if it's not from a dead cow. And I was raised in America, so my taste buds can't tell the difference. Oh yeah, there's too much manufactured compliance into subjugating animals and making them just sandwiches. While then we wonder, oh, why aren't people swayed by the kids argument? Well, it's because animals are sandwiches. You think those people care about kids? No, of course they don't. They consume multiple animals daily. As if that shit's not weird.
Yeah, those kids are just using up their air, right? Something like that, drinking
Basically.
their water, potentially eating their hamburger and fries.
Yeah. When that game theory by people who don't understand actual game theory gets used. You're breathing up my air!
We've only got so much of it. The sun can only make so much every time it explodes. Well, that's actually too complicated of a projection. Apparently, we are in for a series of extreme climate change for the next 20 years as the moon is going through its big phase change or whatever it is. And we're going to have high tides like crazy. And it's going to screw up all of our modeling for our climate modeling. And then throw in all of the air conditioners that are always running during half of the year. Actually, no, they're running all year round. It's just their locations just rotate. And all the new cars that are still being driven, and all of the mining equipment that has to run to create the materials for electric cars. All of this stuff is running, and it's just going to exacerbate our climate situation. More doom and gloom, right? So it's within our lifetimes, we might actually see the end of consistent seasons. Like, in the down.
I mean, they already are. And I can tell they're already done.
I agree, but like it's but I mean, like, we might actually see the emergence of new seasonal naming convention to describe what's going on.
Bro, it went straight in from winter to summer this year. There was no spring.
I don't know. It feels like spring this week.
I mean, yeah, it feels like we went from summer to winter back to spring. So, yeah, something's different, and only people who are aware enough realize it. But yeah, eventually people are going to catch up and realize, yeah, that naming convention we had for the seasons no longer applies.
Yeah.
The
well,
because I think I said it. We've had mostly winters, like, under the right circumstances. We may have 6 months of winter this year, at least. We're already at like 4.
Wow. 31 years ago when I moved to Indiana, there were 4. You say we only have
3 months. 3 months apiece.
3 months apiece, like clockwork.
Yes. Which again is like, when you have, we're already at like 4 months of winter basically this year, and then 1 month of summer with really no spring. And like you said, it is starting to drift back into spring, but that's not the way it's supposed to work.
No, hell no.
Unless we're going into fall and we just don't know it, but I don't think that's the case. Obviously.
Oh no.
August is our hottest time, so.
Yeah.
Usually
it's supposed to be. It wasn't the hottest time last year. Last year September was hot.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll see.
We're definitely gonna have to. We should come up with some new names for these weird seasons, because, or at least for submission, because at some point, summer's just not going to cut it. Summer's not going to be accurate anymore. Fall's not going to be accurate. Winter is probably going to be accurate for the most part.
Splinter.
Then
spring. Then bummer. Then summer.
Then fail. No, fall comes before fail, right? Or does the fail come before the fall? The fail comes before the fall.
Oh man.
And then you have Halloween and Thanksgiving season, because that might as well be wrapped up into one. Get Halloween and Thanksgiving season, and then back into winter. They could just call Halloween, Thanksgiving season, what is it? Shopping season. Although it seems that it seems like Black Friday got extended into an entire week or 2 weeks this last year, and then there's like, I think we had a fake Black Friday not too long ago. It was like an April or May Black Friday thing. Any excuse to spur consumerism, of course, right?
Yeah. Well, but then what do people have left to buy? Not any PS5s left to purchase.
Yeah, you can't, like, there are no chips to buy new computers and cars with. Although apparently there are some video cards that you can buy. You can buy video cards finally.
Oh, right. Yeah, finally.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio. Exceptional.